I know multiple professors at Benedictine that have standing offers that if a student throws their smartphone into the Missouri River, that they get, extra credit or an A in class.
If you found that clip interesting, you're going to absolutely love the conversation on today's episode of 7-Minute Expert. I sit down with Jeff Schremmer, the student body president of Benedictine College. We discuss issues of faith, marriage, family, and policy, abortion, and other issues related to the Catholic and Jewish faiths and why you should go to a religious college. If you like these forms of conversations and these episodes, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'm Gideon Askowitz, and this is 7-Minute Expert. Well, first, what school are you at, and why'd you choose to go there? Let's start with that. You're in high school in Kansas. You grew up in a small town, I'm assuming, as everything's small compared to New York. And why'd you decide to go to a Catholic school?
Yeah, so I'm from Pittsburgh, Kansas, a population about 20,000. My high school graduating class was 40. So we weren't huge. And I'm Kansas through and through. So, I was looking at schools around the area, considered other schools and that, but I really was looking for a religious education. Actually, my family is, devoutly Catholic. And that's something that's really important to me and part of my identity. And so that's really something I was looking for. And, thankfully we have a really good Catholic college here in Kansas, Benedictine College. That's where I ended up going for many reasons. The faith component was a major aspect of that. The college is devoutly Catholic, but also the college is, committed to conservative principles. The college is, doing things that other schools aren't doing in terms of, committing itself to the principles of the American founding, in terms of, a holistic, robust liberal arts approach in the classical sense, not the way that kind of the term liberal arts has been warped in other senses.
I'm sorry, did you not have a mandatory women and gender studies requirement like I had?
See, we did not. Our liberal arts courses are, philosophy and things like this. And so, liberal arts in an actually traditional sense, I was looking for all of those things. I'm part of our Center for Constitutional Liberty here, which has really been great. And like you mentioned, so I'm serving currently my second term as student body president of the college. Have been able to do some amazing things with that role. I'm super excited. It's a great to be able to hold a leadership position with your peers. That's always a great honor and blessing. And so, I've been honored to do that for the past 2 years and really excited.
What's the size of the college?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a little over 2,250 right now. So 2,250 students. We've been growing at a pretty unprecedented rate. So the college is actually incredibly old. It was founded before Kansas was even a state, 1858. So pre-Civil War. If you know anything about Kansas, right before the Civil War, that's not a great time to start anything. Bleeding Kansas is kind of going on at that time. But the monks that started the school, and then the sisters who came after, they were really resilient. And so, the college has been around for a long time, but just really over the past 20 years with the leadership of our president, Steve Minnis, and all of these things, the college has kind of recommitted itself to the traditional principles of the Benedictine order, of the church, of liberal arts education. We've really seen this flourishing of the student body, unprecedented growth, building new residence halls. We're building a new library right now that's modeled after Independence Hall in Philadelphia. That's going to have a museum style replica of the signing room and all of these things. We're going to bring, school children in to teach them about the founding. Colleges aren't doing these things. If you've looked around recently, colleges are not doing well in general. Like colleges are closing, especially small liberal arts schools. But the ones that are thriving are actually ones that have some sort of vision and mission and are committed to some sort of, religious principles and traditional values. These are the colleges that are actually thriving, and we're happy to be a part of that.
Do you think that the college's religion? Let's start with this. Are all of the students as religious as you are? Because certainly, just so you know, in New York, certainly in New York City, there are not that many very religious Catholics. You guys were, I think, the second sex. I did Hertog the previous summer doing the constitutional studies program, but for sure Hertog was the first time that I met people who actually went to church every day. Especially also, I know, do you go to TLM, traditional Latin Mass?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
so like that was, all of that was a big first. How religious is the actual student body, or are students just there to get the excellent education that the college offers? Because as soon as I've found, as soon as you're not a completely secular university, they take the education a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, I'm glad that we were a good example of devout Catholics to you this summer.
Excellent,
Going to
excellent.
daily mass. I'm excited to hear that. Um, but in terms of the school, the school is pretty devoutly Catholic. We're over 80% of our student body is Catholic. So, we have some non-Catholic students, and, that's completely fine. We're always, we're open to everybody. And like you mentioned, the quality of education is incredibly high. Our professors are I always tell people are overqualified to teach at a school of only 2,000 students, but they want to teach here because the academic environment is so rigorous. So some people are coming for those reasons, and that's great. But overall, yeah, the college is devoutly religious. I'm the student body president, and student body presidents at other schools. I talk to people who are in student leadership positions around the country, and student body presidents at other schools. They're dealing with encampments on on
Oh,
their
you want to?
quads. They're dealing with all this sorts of stuff. They're dealing with all this DEI stuff. The main thing, the like number one thing that students come to me with is that the confession lines are too long on campus. That we need more mass times to accommodate people. Like these are the things that are going on, and I would much rather deal with that than some of these other things that are going on. And so yeah, I mean the college is devoutly religious, and it really comes from the leadership of the school is very committed to those things. We're an explicitly pro-life college. We're explicitly committed to the principles of the church. And so all of those things kind of trickle down. That's our reputation. And so even if a student is non-Catholic that's coming to the school, which we absolutely encourage, we love everybody to come, they know what they're getting themselves into. This is our identity as a school. We're not going to deny it. We're obviously going to be open to everybody, ecumenical, accommodating, but the school has principles and we're not going to deny those.
So I just want to pull on that thread. So what does it mean to be at a pro-life college? Because I don't think you actually understand. I know you talk to other student leaders. If I, for example, went out in my school, I go to Hunter College, which is a part of the State University of New York, largest urban public college in the country. And I said that I'm devoutly pro-life, which I pretty much am, which we discussed a lot. There's some nuanced differences between the way Orthodox Jews view abortion and traditional Catholics, but it's basically the same. I don't think you understand the amount of animosity. It would be almost as much animosity as people get if they find out that you are conservative generally. Actually, it's more. It's quite frightening. I think you could probably face academic repercussions from professors. You could face complete stigmatization from your peers. So you wouldn't be able to work on any projects with anybody. People would bomb your assignments for you, which actually what had once had a student do when he found out that I was an Orthodox Jew,
Mm-hmm.
very religious Muslim. He did not like me at all. Yeah, yeah. So what does it look like to be at a college where people, for the most part, are pro-life and share religious values?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I mean, the experiences that you're sharing, it's just completely different from what I experience. And, I'm feeling bad because these are the things that are going on. And it's just night and day, what is happening at traditional religious schools. So like I said, Benedictine is explicitly a pro-life college. We had a college party thrown by the administration when Roe was overturned. We have memorials for the unborn on campus. Our pro-life club on campus is nationally recognized as a leader in the pro-life movement. I received an award from the college administration for my work in the pro-life movement. So the college is explicitly promoting these things. The winner of the college's most prestigious award just this weekend was Bishop Andrew Cousins, who has been a terrific leader in the pro-life movement. So it's really just night and day with what you're describing. And this is really important because it allows us to actually have good conversations about prudent things. When you're in an environment where there's lots of animosity towards a pro-life position, when you're fighting back against these things, it's hard to actually have any intellectual discussion about, okay, what is the most prudential way to go forth on abortion policy after Dobbs? What are the arguments that we should be making? What are the policies that we should be pursuing in a spirit of prudence now that this is kind of back to the States, and we're able to have those conversations because we're all kind of starting at the same baseline, which I think is really good and actually really, healthy for the movement. And people disagree. If you don't think that just because we're kind of a pro-life college, a conservative college, if you don't think that people disagree, you would be wrong. In fact, some of the most kind of heated conversations on campus happen about abortion. It's a heated topic. But it's not about, whether or not abortion is good. It's about, prudential matters. What is the best way to go forth about these things? People debate about President Trump's abortion policies all the time in a very,
He's pretty liberal.
exactly. And so, people debate about these things, I think it's actually a better environment to facilitate that debate because we're kind of starting from the same principles.
Do you think that there's an energy on the campus to actually follow through and make real policy change? So one of the things that I like to talk about on this show is, as you know, like when we were talking over the summer, I did a lot of lobbying work in Congress after the program for the group that I represent, Jewish Students for America. And we're working a lot on foreign funding and education, removing a lot of that. But is there like a real energy on your campus to create those move those conversations from just conversations to real policy?
Absolutely. I mean, there's tons of energy on campus to do those things. Our pro-life group, Ravens Respect Life, is really kind of involved in these things, especially with the state legislature. In Kansas specifically, we had a ballot initiative a couple years ago. I specifically worked on that campaign, and we lost, actually. And so the right to abortion, defined in a very expansive sense by the Kansas Supreme Court, is protected in the state of Kansas constitutionally. And so really what we're working on in terms of law and policy here in Kansas is making sure that we have funding for pregnancy resource centers, making sure we're criminalizing people that are coercing mothers into abortions, things on the margins, things on the fringes. Obviously, that's not where we would like to be. And in the future, we're hoping that's not where we are, but that's kind of where we're at. And there's lots of energy on the student body surrounding those sorts of things, as well as nationally. But our students and I myself, we recognize that our first and foremost vocation at the college is as students. We're here to learn. We're here to, grow in a liberal arts formation. We have great professors here, and primarily we are here to be formed in an academic environment to then go out. And the college's mission and vision statement, the vision statement of the college is to transform culture in America. We're forming students in a community of faith and scholarship to go out and transform culture in America. So we recognize that our vocation right now, our station in life, is to be formed by the great people that are around us. And then, when I go and graduate in the spring and then eventually from law school, what is my job? Well, it's to go out and to put these principles into action and to lead and to transform culture on the issue of life, obviously, but on all of these other issues that are so important as it relates to faith, as it relates to religious liberty, as it relates to all of these things.
So in terms of the education, the liberal arts education, the student body mostly pursues what type of degree? Are there different types of programs, different tracks? What does it look like to be at a religious college? Because I know you know this, but most people do not have the privilege of going to a religious university.
That's absolutely true. And I'm so blessed to be able to come here on a scholarship. Actually, one of the things about going to religious schools that are that are private, is that they tend to be more expensive. And so it really is more difficult to go. I wouldn't have been able to come to Benedictine without my scholarship. And so I'm really blessed to be able to be here. But in terms of what the academics look like, so there's some Catholic schools and just traditionally religious schools in general that only offer maybe liberal arts degrees or only offer other like general studies degrees or something like that. We don't do that. We actually have a pretty robust academic program in terms of offerings. So we are a small Catholic school, but we have a pretty robust engineering program. We have an architecture program in which people are, studying to be licensed as architects as their after they graduate. And we actually think that's really important that we're able to form solidly Catholic students in kind of the liberal arts tradition and have them, have technical expertise to be able to go and do things. It's one thing to graduate with a liberal arts degree and you're probably like really well off, intellectually, and you've learned a lot of things, but in terms of going out and getting a job and transforming culture, that might not be as effective. So lots of people, get theology degrees and they go and teach, or get philosophy degrees and go do other things. But from my experience, lots of people are studying business. I'm studying economics and politics, planning on going to law school. Lots of my friends are engineers. But the funny thing is that, we've got these engineers and architects and economists and all these people, and we come together back in the dorms in the evenings and we're still having discussions, about philosophy or about, Aquinas or all of these things. I mean, you
guys love Aquinas.
These are we love Aquinas. That's definitely true. But I mean, these are future engineers, and I'm, having conversations with these people about, what's going on in the intellectual in academia right now, what's going on with these things. And we're able to have, really robust conversations about these things. And these are people that are going to be engineers and architects with technical expertise. And we think that's so important, because transforming culture, doing all of these things, getting things done in the conservative movement, it doesn't just happen in academia. It actually happens from, regular Americans living their lives, being professionals, but also, living this liberal arts in a very holistic way.
Living your life in the way of the virtues. I've just started reading the ethics after I got all these lectures from you
Absolutely.
guys.
Absolutely.
So what is dorm life? Not just dorm life, because so this might be a bit of a shock to you. So if you're a religious Orthodox Jewish institution, for example, so Yeshiva University for one, the campuses, the men and women are on separate campuses. So I know that's not the case for you guys, and for certainly also I don't think for Hillsdale or any of those other Catholic schools. So what is like the social life and the general school life look like for a college student?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Benedictine actually used to be single sex education. So we had a men's college, St. Benedict's College, and a women's campus, St. Scholastica College. They have since combined, like you mentioned. So we're a coeducational campus, but our dorms are separate, for example. So that might be kind of foreign to people that are going to secular schools. We have men's dorms and we have women's dorms. In the middle of the night, a man can't be in a women's dorm and a woman can't be in a men's dorm.
Can you have my sister, when she was dorming she's in the same program as I was. Do you have any transgendered students in the dorms? Or actually, she had a trans species. She had a cat, a man who identified as a cat in her bathroom. You don't have that?
I've never heard of a situation in which we've had to deal with that at all. We are in rural Kansas, so some of the things that are kind of going on in New York City haven't really trickled down to Kansas yet. So we're fortunate not to have to deal with a lot of these things. But we handle these things, common sense. We're very common sense about these things. We have a common sense visitation policy between the dorms. Men and women aren't living together in the same dorms and all these things. We think it facilitates an environment in which people are able to grow in their studies and, be formed as adults into people that are going to go out into the world. But student life is very robust here. We're a residential campus, meaning almost all of our students live on campus. We think that's actually really important. So we were having a lot of events on campus. You probably haven't heard of the bustling metropolis of Atchison, Kansas.
I haven't heard
not
of
really
Atchison,
on the
Kansas.
There's not a lot of stuff going on in Atchison. We're a little bit away from Kansas City, but so there's always stuff going on campus. We're having concerts, we're having game nights, and it's really kind of a robust student life in which we're actually living together. You walk down Campus Drive, people aren't wearing headphones. People are actually like stopping and talking to each other. People aren't just having their AirPods in all of the time. And we think, that might be my favorite thing about Benedictine, is that the community is just so robust. Yeah. So, I love my podcast.
In New York City, you don't go anywhere without your AirPods because a crazy person will talk to you.
Just as much as the next guy. I love listening to podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. But, when people are outside, people are talking to each other. And, people are, going and eating together and, going to the dining hall and going to study together and hanging out at the coffee shops. And really, I think the best academic formation happens really in those just conversations day to day that you're having with people. And so, by being a residential college, having people live on campus, having a robust social life, I think that facilitates that so much.
Honestly, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like I viewed Hertog as like a summer way to get my education in a real way. And it sounds like your college experience has just been that and over an extended period of time.
That's exactly how I would describe it as well. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. What made you decide to run for the student body president?
That's a great question. So I've always been interested in politics and all of these things. I was a big student council guy in high school. That's always just kind of been my personality, wanting to, have leadership positions, serve in any way that I can. So when I came in as a freshman, I knew that I was going to run for student government, like class senator position or whatever. And I have a funny story, actually. So I was running and the ice cream machine in the dining hall had been broken.
Tragic.
People were not happy about this. People wanted the ice cream machine to be working. And so I ran my freshman year. I got posters. I will fix the ice cream machine. Vote for Jeff for class senator. I will fix the ice cream machine. And people liked that a lot. And so they voted for me, And before I had even been sworn into office, before I even have been to a single meeting on the student government, the ice cream machine gets fixed. And so everybody's coming up to me. They're saying, Jeff, you worked so fast. Like you're so great. Like this is awesome. And, me being the honest guy that I am said, you know what? I am pretty efficient, I'm pretty good at doing all these things. No, but so that was really, really fun. And so I was kind of a freshman senator. I did a stint as student body vice president when that role kind of opened up. And then then yeah, I mean, the student body is pretty small, so it's not like we have like the most competitive elections in the world. I know that at some schools, student government is like incredibly contentious because you're dealing with lots of issues that are really controversial in the mainstream, with like gender issues and sexuality issues, and in terms of like bathroom policies and all these things. We're not really dealing with those things. So student government is actually much less contentious here. It actually just comes down to, who's actually, willing to serve and actually talk to students and all of these things. And, so we're really dealing with dining, parking policies, things like that. I would much rather deal with that stuff than some of the stuff that's going on at other schools.
I think we're currently dealing with whether or not at my school, I think we're dealing with whether or not we will allow ICE to come in on campus. I think that's the current issue, and whether or not we should have more Palestine protests. I think those are the two topics that you're allowed to discuss on my campus.
We haven't had any Palestine protests yet. So,
really?
Yeah. So this never happened here. And so I haven't had to deal with that at all.
No encampment.
This is rural Kansas. There's no encampments going on. I haven't had to deal with it. The stuff that I have to deal with compared to everybody else is pretty mild. Somebody didn't like what they served at the dining hall for breakfast that day. That's kind of the extent of it.
But you also said that you had to like speak to donors. Is that right? You had a speech at a dinner?
Oh, yeah. So I gave a speech this past weekend, actually, at our scholarship ball. So we raised about $1.5 million for student scholarships at the Overland Park Convention Center. That was really great. And so I was blessed with the opportunity to speak at that event. The speech should be posted online pretty soon. So I'll send it to you. But really what I focused on in that speech was, at Benedictine, we're forming students in a way that doesn't really make sense to everybody else. Everybody's looking at what we're doing in Kansas, and it doesn't make any sense. Colleges aren't building libraries anymore because you can get it all on your phone. But
why would you build a library?
Exactly. Well, it doesn't make any sense. People are like, why would you build a new library on campus for millions and millions of dollars? Model it after Independence Hall in Philadelphia, have museum-style replicas committed to the American founding. Why would you do this stuff? And it's because we're actually committed to, building spaces for students to learn and grow in a way that just isn't your cell phone or, AI. We actually want to form students in a holistic manner. And, studies show that, students who study in a library as opposed to somewhere else, even if they study the same amount of time, the student who studies in the library does better academically. And so having these spaces that are committed to academic study, that show our commitment to academic rigor, we think that's actually like the most important thing. And so, colleges aren't building libraries. We're building libraries. Colleges aren't committing themselves to religious principles. We're doing that. And so, a lot of the things that we're doing, they just don't make sense to everybody else. And that's okay. They don't have to make sense because we know that what we're doing is we're forming students in a holistic manner, in a traditional manner that's going to, enable them to go out into the world and be successful.
That's really awesome. It's a great pitch. And as you were talking about, like, you're going to build a library so students on their phones, I'm beginning to think of something like, oh, did the Catholics start observing Shabbat? Like, are you guys not going on your phones once a week?
Well, that's actually really interesting. So, you and I both know Luke Ogden, who was there this summer. He's big into the humanality movement, which is kind of aimed at getting people off of their cell phones. They have these things called light phones that are like kind of dumb phones instead of smartphones. And actually, this thing has a real appeal at Benedictine and at other like traditionally religious colleges around the country, where we see this movement of young people who are realizing that like being on social media all the time probably isn't good for their mental health. And like, it's actually better to like go outside, and all of these things. So, I actually, over the past few months, have deleted all of my social media and things like that. I'm still on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, but other than that, I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. And actually, you see this like resurgence of like young people who are kind of rejecting like modern social media and technology and things like that. Like, obviously, I still have like my phone, I email and all of these things, but like, I think a lot of young people are recognizing like what we've been sold when it comes to, smartphones and social media and stuff is kind of a lie and probably isn't like that good for us. And it's actually better to kind of go outside, play catch, like walk around and hang out with people. This week in Atchison is kind of the first week that it's been really nice and kind of felt like springtime. And it's not really cold anymore. just everybody is outside, having picnics and, just throwing the ball around, hacky sack, you think you just see that in the movies. I'd never seen somebody play hacky sack before I came to
It's a lot
Benedictine
of fun.
College. It's everywhere. Everybody's just playing hacky sack outside. And I think it's great. I think it's terrific. And, people aren't, on their phones all the time. I think this is actually the way that we transform the culture. We can talk about politics all we want. It's incredibly important. That's what I'm going into, in life. I think it's incredibly important. But I think probably the most important thing is just like living like regular human beings, like going outside, having relationships, studying, reading every once in a while instead of scrolling on our phones. Like this is actually the way that we transform culture, is just like living authentically human lives, going to church, this is the way.
It's actually funny. I think that I'm going to burst your bubble here. This is for the Orthodox Jewish movement, a very, very old concept. A lot of
Yes, it is. You guys have been doing this for a long time.
We call them, no, not even just the Shabbos issue. The phone, like not having a phone. We have what's called a kosher phone. So that'll be, if you go into Brooklyn, for example, you go to like the more ultra Orthodox areas, or even some people in Yeshiva University and some of those like more modern Orthodox, what are called people, they'll have either a smartphone that has limited internet access to some capacity, or they'll have literally a flip phone. They'll have an old flip phone and they'll be using that, and they're not on the internet all that much. So I think it's great that other people are catching on. I definitely recommend it.
I mean, you guys know what's going on. Then, I know multiple professors at Benedictine that have standing offers that if a student throws their smartphone into the Missouri River, that they get, extra credit or an A in class or something like that. So, we're kind of catching on to maybe what you guys have been doing for a little longer than us.
Is that catching on for, I'm just curious, the younger crowd. So if you have younger siblings, like 16, 15 years old, are high schoolers beginning to process that their phones are not so good for them, that social media is rather harmful?
I think it is really catching on, actually. I think parents especially, because I'm kind of at a college age, at the age where for religious people are starting to get married and things like that. That might be kind of foreign to everybody else, but like, tons of my classmates are engaged or married. This is not uncommon for us at Benedictine College. People are getting married here all the time. People are married and have kids their senior year. This is not uncommon. And when you ask people who are going to be parents, now who are in their 20s, are you going to let your kids have like a phone or a tablet when they're a kid? Everybody unequivocally everybody knows this is a terrible idea. And so I think our generation was really the generation where, we were given, phones from a young age. There was obviously variation, kind of this Gen Alpha stuff right now where kids are like, on tablets all the time. I think as our generation becomes parents, we're realizing like that's probably not a good idea. And this isn't actually, and maybe, I'm kind of in a bubble because I hang out with, conservative religious people all of the time at Benedictine. But, I travel all around the country doing different stuff, various fellowships and conferences and whatnot. And even when I talk to people that aren't necessarily religious, but are just, generally conservative or moderate, or even actually some liberals that I talk to, they're like, yeah, there's no way I'm giving my kid a phone when they're 8 years old. Like, this is just a terrible idea. We're not going to do it. And so actually this might just be, along the spectrum where people kind of in our generation are realizing this might not be the best way to raise kids. So I actually think, the generations that are like currently being born and, over the next, 5-10 years, actually will probably have a much better situation in terms of their parents probably grew up on social media and maybe realized that that's not the best way to do it.
I hope you're right. I very much hope you're
right. Maybe I'm living in a bubble, like I said before, but at least the people that I talk to, and, I travel around quite a bit. The people that I talk to, it really is, there's this growing sentiment that, we should probably have more restrictions on social media use and technology use and all of these things. Giving a, 8-year-old a phone with unfettered internet access probably just isn't that good of an idea.
I'm curious. It's funny that you said it, because I think a lot of viewers are going to be rather horrified to hear that you have 22-year-olds who are getting married. This is something we have, again, in common. Probably about 50% of my friends are engaged or married. I was just having lunch the other guy with he has a kid. He's 21. He might be 22. I mean, this is very common in the Orthodox world. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is something that when other people, let's say some of the more liberal folks, the California people, do you think that they think that we're backwards? Do you think that we can, how do we explain to other people that you have you actually have a duty, in fact, to the country and to God to populate the earth and to rear good citizens?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, yes, I do think that the California people think that we're backward and are probably horrified at what's going on. But like, yeah, like you were saying, tons of my friends are engaged or are married, and this is not uncommon at Benedictine. Even people like from my high school class who go to like secular schools, like lots of them are engaged. This is just more common actually in rural states too than it is in urban states. And I see no problem with people waiting until they're ready to and in a situation in life to get married. But people getting married young is really kind of associated with like traditional religion right now, which hasn't always been the case. But traditionally religious people are the people that are actually getting married, having kids, doing it younger than other people. And this is seen as kind of a backwards thing. We don't see that as this. Everybody here sees this as great. Somebody gets married, like, congratulations, you're having kids. Like, that's terrific. Like, what a gift, what a blessing to be able to do that, and to be blessed with children, and all of these things. And so, we see this kind of in a completely different way than maybe other parts of the country, the world would see, marriage and family life. We really believe in the Catholic social tradition and just religious, tradition in general, and the whole Judeo-Christian tradition, really sees the family as the basic unit of the society, not just the individual. We're not just isolated individuals, going around in some type of primordial soup, but we're actually, we come into being in families. Family life is incredibly important. And,
Sound like de Tocqueville.
exactly. Well, Tocqueville would completely agree. That's the thing. Tocqueville would completely, everybody talks about Tocqueville's individualism and, self-interest rightly understood and all of these things. And he certainly articulated these things, but he saw these things in the context of the family as well. The family is kind of essential for the country. And
little
raising
platoons.
good children, raising, children who are going to be good citizens and, doing these things. Like, this is one of the most fundamental parts of, what it means. Obviously, some people aren't necessarily called to family life. For Catholics, we believe some people are called to religious life, to priesthood, all of these things.
Yeah, we talked about this. For me, this is one of the craziest things to learn about.
Yeah, I mean, so we believe that some people are called to celibacy, obviously, but for the rest of us, that are called to married life, to raise children. I mean, this is one of the greatest blessings and duties that we have to get married, to raise good children. I mean, this is part of human life. I mean, this is what you do, and it's a good thing. We see this as a good thing. This isn't a burden. This is a good thing.
Okay, so I think if we have some time, I think we should go there. Let's compare. What does it look like to be dating as a Catholic, as a young Catholic, versus dating as an Orthodox Jew? I think a lot of people find it interesting. For whatever reason, there are a lot of Netflix shows about Jewish dating.
Yeah,
people find it fascinating.
Yeah, so this is actually, it's a really interesting question, because this is something that's kind of been in the media. I guess Catholic media recently is like, what is wrong with Catholic dating right now? And so, I've got a friend who's a journalist for National Catholic Register, which is kind of our big national news organization. He's written articles about this, like, what is going on with Catholic dating? Like, is it broken?
Tell me.
And in some sense, some people think that it is, that people kind of rush into relationships and things like this, which to a certain extent might be true. You probably want to get to know somebody a little bit before you get married to them. This is kind of we want to be prudent in all things, obviously prudence in all things. And so, you don't want to be imprudent in the way you rush into relationships and things like this. But in a sense, in terms of dating at Benedictine, and just Catholic life in general, from everybody that I talk to, there's not these like 5-6 year dating periods and then another 5-6 year engagement. This isn't really that common. People are dating for, a reasonable amount of time, maybe it'd be a year, maybe less than that. For you guys, it's
I was talking to Orthodox Jew. I'm gonna beat you here.
Exactly. And then people are getting engaged. The Catholic Church requires like a 6 to 9 month engagement period in order to do marriage prep for the sacrament of matrimony. And that varies by diocese. But this is just a prudential judgment that the United States bishops have made to basically enable married couples to meet with the priest that will marry them, to talk about the obligations of marriage and, make sure that the marriage is going to be valid and all of these things. And so those things happen, but we really don't see these 10-year drawn out before you get married relationships here at Benedictine. I'm sure your situation is, similar, maybe even a little more so than that.
I got a friend who got engaged in 6 weeks.
Yeah. This, yeah. So
To be
that
clear,
might
this
be a
is
little
6 weeks
uncommon here.
from basically meeting the girl.
Yeah, so that the timeline's a little more drawn out, maybe in the Catholic world or at Benedictine College. There might be a little bit of difference in the cultures there.
That's fascinating. So when people are talking about that dating is broken, my interest you to know that people talk about the Orthodox Jewish dating system is broken. Also, it's called the shidduch crisis. Shidduch means match. So they'll talk about the shidduch crisis. So what's the Catholic shidduch crisis?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a general criticism by mainstream Catholicism of kind of young, traditionally Catholic people about, getting into relationships too quickly and getting married too quickly in an imprudent manner. And so, and sometimes these things do happen. I'm not going to deny that it happens, but sometimes I think there's criticisms that are just, why are people getting married so young and having kids so young? We don't want this. This isn't good. You need to wait until you're 35 and then have one kid or whatever. That's not what people desire. Traditional religious young people they're drawn to traditional liturgy. They're drawn to kind of the richness of the biblical tradition. They're having large families. These are great things.
It's fascinating to see how similar a lot of these issues are. You would not think, I don't think, that the dating issues that are prevalent in the Catholic community in Kansas would mirror the ones that are happening in the Orthodox Jewish community in New York.
You wouldn't think so.
But they're indeed. I think we'll call it a wrap there.
Hey,
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love being here. Yeah, I know we had a little bit of trouble setting it up, but I'm so happy that we were able to.
So as always, Jeff, it was a pleasure having you on. If you like this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be bringing you more content like this, where we discuss important issues to conservative culture and issues of faith and politics. I'm Gideon Askowitz, and this is 7 Minute Expert.